Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron.
So I have kind of controversial thing to say to you, Joel.
Aaron, those are called hot takes.
I'd say that none of your projects are really that unique or interesting.
Can you elaborate on that?
I'm glad you asked, because otherwise I just sound like a jerk.
You're right, yeah.
No, I was thinking about this the other day as I was working on something, and I saw a lot of overlaps with other projects. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a couple different ways to look at the fact that all of our projects are similar. So from more of a technical point of view, we talk a lot about design patterns. Okay. And so what are design patterns? They're these sort of patterns or ways of doing something that were invented many, many years ago, that kind of say, like, this is how you would build software architecture. Mm-hmm. So some of these are like singleton or adapter pattern or things like those. Those are all design patterns that are implemented differently in every language, but the idea of what they're trying to accomplish is the same.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds a little boring, but I mean, I prefer to just like reinvent everything myself. But I joke.
So I mean, I think I ran into that the first time when I was working with a dental insurance company that had 40 RPG programmers that they basically work on AS400. And we were working together, and they started talking to me about programming, and I was this hotshot PHP web developer. There was nothing I could learn from them, right? Because I'm away with the future, and they're using green screen. And then as they started to share some of their code with me, I mean, granted, they printed it out, which I never understood, but okay. But they shared the code with me. I started recognizing things that were very similar to what I was doing. And I asked questions, and they're like, "Oh, that's the so-and-so pattern or design pattern." I'm like, "Wait, you have patterns?" And that's when I had learned as a PHP developer, oh, people have solved all the problems of programming basically already, and we can follow these patterns and apply them to our own languages. And so that really got me thinking about, where else do we see that in our projects? And the reason I call your projects boring, or all of our projects boring, or whatever I said, is if you start to look at the core of what you're doing, the businesses themselves may be different, but a lot of the stuff that we're doing is the same no matter what project.
Yeah. And I just to throw some color on this, like, I think when you say boring, you're saying that as a positive thing, right? It's not boring like, oh, this is all the same and like I hate doing this, but more boring like it's not this new novel thing that you have to forge new research on, but that you can kind of learn from the past and learn from other people. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think you're actually putting it in a better way than I am. When I say boring, I was just thinking like, well, there's nothing new about this. And, sometimes you want to, us programmers, we want to go for the shiny thing and learn something new. But with your project, like you said, boring could be good. It could be something that you could learn to do better. And I've always been a fan of sharpening my skills, making them better and better and better. And so these things that are really the same, they're repetitive, actually help me get better and better at doing that thing.
Yeah, and maybe it even kind of shifts where your creativity is. Like, I'm going to use an analogy, and I don't know if this makes sense, but if you're building a house, you're not like the person constructing it isn't like, I wonder how we should frame this wall, or like, I wonder what structure we should use for the basement wall. Like, there's some pretty obvious patterns depending on like where you live and what your budget is and things like that. But the inside of the house, like, you can decorate it however you want. You still have a lot of creativity and freedom. So like in the code, maybe the user experience is the cool thing, or like the place where you put a lot of, try to differentiate yourself. But hey, accessing a database or, doing, communicating with other services or doing things like that probably don't need to forge new ground for most projects, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think that's something you learn if you do many different projects, like we as consultants move in through different projects, but also if you just talk to other team members and learn about different businesses, there's something truly valuable about doing that. Now, if you're building car sales software and you go, well, should I, what does this herb selling platform have anything to do with what I'm building? Well, just talk to them anyway and just learn about their business and learn how they're solving the problems. And what I've seen from that is these people, maybe doing a different business have implemented some of the same patterns that I do, but in a slightly different way. Could be worse, but more often than not, it's something different, better that I can learn from. And so when you look at it from the surface, you're saying, well, that's something completely different. There's no overlap in these two businesses. But when you get down to the code, you're like, wow, we're actually doing the same thing.
Yeah. I think that's a good observation.
That's one of the reasons too why you can see a lot of value with going to conferences, things like that.
Yeah.
Because there's tons of different businesses there, but they're all doing that same language or they're all learning similar things. And when someone goes and says, I'm from AWS and I'm going to write this testing stuff, and you go, wow, actually that does apply to me a little bit.
So I like this, Aaron. I guess maybe one of the things I would add to this is there's like the opposite side of the extreme where you gotta like, how many patterns can I put into my project? So like, I know you're not saying that, but I wanted to call it out. But really, a lot of times, I think the first time I read a design pattern book or like became really familiar with the concept, I just recognized these were things that I had already kind of been doing in some cases, but they had a name now, or maybe they had more details about the benefits of doing it that way versus other ways. And so this isn't like some new thing, like, okay, go rewrite everything with design patterns, but just an acknowledgement that these things exist for a reason, and you're probably doing it to some extent already. But I like that idea about not isolating yourself or feeling isolated. It's kind of a positive thing. Like, hey, you can learn from more people than maybe you thought before previously.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to be wishy-washy and then go on the opposite side and be like, well, don't copy other people in different businesses, but there's a limit to what is the overlap and what is the amount of design patterns you should implement or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've just found in my travels that we need to acknowledge more that we can benefit from learning more about these design patterns and that a lot of our stuff is actually very similar. And I really like your analogy, like, stop trying to figure out what is the best, way to frame the house. We kind of know how to do that.
You're right.
I mean, that's kind of where things like Laravel come in. Like Laravel has tools like Eloquent, for the database access. We've solved how to access the database.
Right.
Settle down, stop trying to put something else in there, and just, use the tools and then build that special sauce on top of that.
Yeah. I like that way of looking at it.
All right. So if I had unlimited money, which would be very bad, right? Because I have a lot of different weird thoughts in my head. But you know how when you buy like LED lights or smart like Hue lights, they have like a little chip in them or whatever.
Okay.
I would invent a light that between like 10 seconds in like 7 minutes or 10 minutes or maybe a couple hours would randomly just blink and then maybe do 2 beeps or something. Okay. And then install those in all of the light sockets when I moved out of my apartment.
Oh boy.
Hey, can you imagine? Because especially like if it's like 10 hours, like you'd have your light on forever and be like, I promise you, it does blink and beep. And you're like, yeah, right. As soon as like someone leaves, all of a sudden it's like beep, blinks.
Why? Well, I think if you want to really put it out there, have it be like a dog bark or something like really random instead of just a beep. So they're like not even sure if it's a real noise coming from outside the house, or like a duck quacking. Like what?
Or someone saying, "Hey." Oh boy! Can you imagine that? It's nighttime. You have your lights on. All of a sudden, you hear someone from the other room. Hey,
yeah, what? 2 a.m. Oh boy, that would be very unsettling.
Well, why did you have your lights on at 2 a.m?
Oh, the light has to be on for this timer to be running?
Oh, I suppose. I guess it was. I would assume, yeah, because then when it like blinked, I thought noise or a blinked a light or something like just enough weirdness that like it was what?
Yeah.
Speaking of things that people have already done before, we've written a book.
And it's full of patterns. The topic of the book is Laravel validation and how you can master validation rules. Find out more at masteringlaravel.io.